Good afternoon, Paul Monson, Utah Valley University. It's an honor to be here in Madrid with you. I discovered Bernard Maybeck later in my career. I was trained in modern classicism at the University of Notre Dame through an orthodox lens focused on Europe, specifically Rome, and the East Coast in the US. The name Bernard Maybeck never came up once in the classroom or on architectural history tours. So when I found myself as the one giving the tours in the American West as a professor at a new classical architecture program in Utah, which I might add, and a shameless plug, is currently hiring full-time faculty, I wasn't sure what to make of this man and his work at first. I'll never forget driving around the corner in San Francisco with my students on our inaugural trip there and hearing a collective audible gasp when the Palace of Fine Arts came into view. It's hard to impress young people. And yet here we were, a dozen young aspiring designers and their faculty transfixed and delighted for the next few hours, exploring, drawing, watercoloring, spellbound by the scale, beauty, and harmony with the landscape of this 20th century classical work of art, a work that captures that elusive spirit of something old and new at the same time, something alive. The only structure rebuilt in permanent form from the 1915 World's Expo, the Palace of Fine Arts is, I believe, the classical soul of the American West, a master class in how Beaux-Arts order, when infused with romantic sensibility, could inspire generations as the sublime heart of the modern city. Who was Bernard Maybeck and what relevance does he have today? Maybeck was one of the most creative interpreters of classical form in modern American architecture. Defying stylistic boundaries, his architecture reveals a disciplined, if unconventional, commitment to enduring metaphysical principles such as harmony, order, and symbolic meaning inherent in the classical tradition. My paper situates Maybeck within the broader context of progressive classicism, arguing that he, perhaps more than any other 20th century architect, exemplifies a living and particularly American form of the modern classical, one rooted in the grammar and principles of historical architecture, yet liberated by imagination, craftsmanship, and the expansive possibilities of modern progress and materials. A little background. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as the fever of gold seekers cooled and railroad tracks stitched together a vast American continent, Northern California became one of the most fertile grounds in the U.S. for architectural experimentation. In the West, far from the academies of Europe and the industry and American Renaissance of the East Coast, experimentation did not demand the rejection of the past, but reinterpretation. Architecture was a testing ground for how inherited forms might respond to new materials, technologies, and landscapes that demanded imagination. From a shared impulse to reform society through design, two divergent interpretations of modernity emerged at this time, one oriented towards nature and the other towards the factory, the high-rise, and the inert technological world. The latter strain of modernism defined innovation as liberation from history, seeking to sever architecture from classical language, ornament, and symbolism in service of efficiency and technology. The arts and crafts movement, by contrast, can be viewed as a second modernism, a classical modernism, or modern classicism that proposed true innovation lay in recovering tradition's inner life, not in abandoning it or quoting its surface forms. The critical point of divergence was whether classical inheritance needed to be killed or reanimated. In this context, Bernard, or Ben Maybeck, as people called him, moved to the Bay Area after training at the prestigious École des Beaux-Arts in Paris and working for a short time for Carrere in Hastings. He took a position teaching drafting and descriptive geometry at Cal Berkeley and tutored Julia Morgan, Arthur Brown Jr., and many other future stars. In 1902, he opened an office in San Francisco, designing over 150 buildings during his lifetime. Maybeck often chose unusual materials, experimenting with cement, industrial steel sash windows, and earthquake-resistant, fireproof materials such as bubble stone and burlap covered in cement gunite. His favorite material, however, was the ubiquitous regional redwood. Maybeck's work demonstrates a fearless willingness to experiment with material, form, and scale while retaining classical rigor and elements, ensuring that innovation never forsook its origins. He was not merely participating in a California cultural movement, he was its most daring specialist, establishing a regional dialect that continues to influence Bay Area architecture and beyond. Maybeck's architectural formation reflected the tension between academic classicism and intensifying critiques of its rigidity. He enrolled in the atelier of Louis-Jules André at the École, a mentor who encouraged intellectual independence and stylistic expression within the discipline of the Beaux-Arts system. Maybeck is not unique as an American studying in Paris, but he radically reinterpreted that training, refusing to treat classicism as a closed academic system or become a revivalist of historic styles, but instead developing his own interpretations of craft, nature, emotion, and regional culture. His distinctive voice is also attributed to his New York childhood immersion in craftsmanship, working alongside his father, a German-trained woodcarver. These values echoed John Ruskin's writings on how Gothic architecture expressed moral truth and the craftsman's labor, which carried into the American arts and crafts movement. The fusion of these impulses, modern materials, and Beaux-Arts logic enlivened by Gothic spirit, became the hallmark of Maybeck's mature work, producing an architecture that demonstrates how the classical tradition can be progressive, experimental, and profoundly modern. These four expressive buildings represent both the breadth of Maybeck's work and his ability to innovate without rejecting tradition. 1. The First Church of Christ Scientist in Berkeley, California, is Bernard Maybeck's most profound religious work and an awe-inspiring example of progressive classicism. Commissioned by a congregation seeking a spiritually elevated space rather than a conventional ecclesiastical image, Maybeck insisted that the building's design arise from modern structure and material. To the request for his architectural services, he warned, quote, "I could do it, but you wouldn't like it. I would use rough material like concrete. It would be the same on the inside as the outside with no sham and no hypocrisy." The congregation risked their modest budget on the middle-aged maverick and within 2 years gathered for worship in this richly ornamented masterpiece that rivals European cathedrals but defies stylistic categorization to this day. Entering the soaring auditorium, the visitor's eyes are drawn forward and upward to curved timber railroad trusses ornamented by gilt Gothic motifs that span the sanctuary, reminiscent of Horyuji or other Buddhist halls in Japan. Massive fluted concrete piers with inventive capitals more medieval than classical support the curving trusses. These columns read simultaneously as classical, Gothic, and modernist structural elements, with no sham and no hypocrisy, demonstrating Maybeck's conviction that ancient architectural principles could be re-expressed through contemporary means. Collaboration with artisans was a hallmark of Maybeck's design approach, and the interior stencils by Christian Schneckenberger are integral to the space. Along with the handmade metal light fixtures pierced by Gothic trefoils, all ornament, furniture, stencils, and colors reinforce the emotional resonance of the church. Ornament is everywhere, with motifs used like talismans, carrying accumulated cultural power. Light and material are modern ingredients in the building's recipe of classical order, Gothic expressiveness, and Asian flavor. The sanctuary is lit by factory-built steel sash windows, diffusing daylight through hanging wisteria, with an ethereal glow that recalls the metaphysical light of Gothic stained glass. Unlike contemporary revivals of European churches, Maybeck begins with ancient principles, clarity of structure and volume, symbolic light, proportional harmony, and invents an original, modern classical building shaped by industrial materials, seismic realities, and an emphasis on inward spiritual experience. The First Church of Christ Scientist stands as his clearest demonstration of how classical order and Gothic expressiveness could be unified in sacred architecture suited to early 20th century California. 2. Not really a building since it encloses no interior space, Maybeck's Palace of Fine Arts is an open Beaux-Arts pantheon. Rather than reconstructing a specific classical precedent, Maybeck composed an imagined fragment of antiquity, a rotunda framed by a colonnade of elegant Corinthian columns, partially enclosing a lagoon and landscape. The monument's deliberate incompleteness invoked the romantic ruins celebrated by Piranesi and later Ruskin, for whom decay was a kind of poetry. Maybeck's most famous architectural work, it's best understood against the backdrop of San Francisco's recovery from the catastrophic earthquake and fires of 1906. In the aftermath of its destruction, civic leaders sought symbolic renewal, culminating in the Expo of 1915, just 9 years later. For the structure to house the fine arts collection, Maybeck proposed a contemplative, even melancholy architectural landscape and image of a fictive ancient Roman ruin. His proposal stood in deliberate contrast to the fair's rhetoric of progress, offering instead a meditation on the fragility of human achievement. Among the most emotionally charged elements are the sculpted weeping women who lean over the edges of sarcophagus-like forms crowning the colonnades, reinforcing themes of memory and mourning. Large urns set atop pedestals punctuate the composition and amplify its funerary undertones. It's possible these motifs were shaped in part by the personal loss of Maybeck, whose mother died when he was just a boy. The proportions, axes, and controlled vistas all reflect Beaux-Arts training. Greek, Roman, and Renaissance ornament is mixed freely throughout, demonstrating Maybeck's command of multiple strains of the classical. Yet this order was animated by theatricality, atmosphere, and scale. You can just make out human figures in the middle image, rather than canonical rules. Originally constructed of temporary plaster and burlap like all the fair's structures, Maybeck's building was the only one preserved thanks to overwhelming public affection. In deteriorating condition at first and ultimately permanently reconstructed in concrete, it stands today, as I suggested, as the classical soul of the American West. 3. Maybeck's interest in craftsmanship and materiality resulted in many homes in Berkeley that he called Gothic houses, although they bear little resemblance to other Gothic revival architecture. The Kennedy-Nixon House is one exploration of domestic architecture as a civic art. It demonstrates his belief that a house could accommodate artistic performance and elevate daily life. Classical discipline creates a hierarchy of spaces, yet the exterior is softened by asymmetry, varied roof lines, multiple balconies, and a responsiveness to the topography of Berkeley's hillside. The centerpiece is the soaring recital hall, rising nearly 20 feet. The hall is illuminated by tall, pointed arch tracery windows with diamond pane leaded glass, casting a filtered light across warm redwood paneling. The result is a reimagining of Gothic space as an elevated setting for music and domestic gathering. It functions almost as a chapel, an interior where music takes a sacred role within family living. Final example, by the 1920s, the automobile had become one of the most powerful forces reshaping American cities, and San Francisco's Van Ness Avenue was the city's urban showroom. Bernard Maybeck's Packard showroom building addressed this new urban condition with exuberant classical modernism. Corinthian columns are a peripteral temple exoskeleton that allow for large expanses of glass curtain walls behind them. The steel frame windows span multiple floors and allow uninterrupted views of automobiles within a flexible, open interior supported by polished monolithic marble columns. In instructions to the builders, Maybeck urged them to have reverence for the past, writing, quote, "Imagine that no cars roar by on Van Ness Avenue and that no telephone will call you from your work. Believe yourselves instead working in the gloom of a cathedral of the Middle Ages, your overseer a monk or an artisan who loves, as you do, the work at hand." Maybeck received the AIA's prestigious gold medal in 1951, but still remains in relative obscurity because he dared to champion classicism while the world had moved on. His architecture ultimately resists the conventional binaries of 20th century architectural history. Neither a nostalgic revivalist nor a doctrinaire modernist. Maybeck embodies progressive classicism, a living tradition in enduring principles, yet open to regional expression. However, this term progressive classicism, I would argue, is in the end tautological. Is it not redundant to even say progressive classicism, as classicism has never been a static catalog of forms, but a living tradition that continually renews itself through adaptation, reinterpretation, and engagement with contemporary conditions? Thank you.